Do you have stuff? I know I have stuff. I have stuff everywhere. And fortunately, stuff is exactly what we need to draw a still life today. A still life is a picture of objects or stuff. And a still life is even better if you're drawing a picture of your stuff instead of someone else's stuff, which would be stealing, and we all know that's wrong. So let's use our own stuff. Plus, using our own stuff tells the viewer a little bit about us, because it might show them the things that we like, or the things that we have, or the things that we find interesting. Now, every time we do a still life, we're focused on details, overlapping, and shading. So even though we're going to be focusing on shading today, there's still going to be details and overlapping that we need to work on, because those come along with every still life we do. So go ahead and grab some paper and a pencil. If you want some colors, get some of those. And most importantly, find some cool stuff. Look around, find some objects that you think would be interesting to draw that also have lots of details that you can try to include in your picture. And then come back and let's get drawing.
The first thing we're going to do is draw the basic shape for each object and organize where they go. So that means for the A, we're going to draw a triangle. For the B, which is a jar, that's a cylinder. The C is an oval with an opening on one side, and the D is on a cylinder. Before you get too far, also check the overlapping and the sizes of your objects so you can make any corrections you need to. Then we go back to the A and start again with the next set of details that are a little bit smaller but still very important. And we keep going in this pattern, moving from object to object, drawing smaller and smaller details until we've drawn as many details as we possibly can. As we are adding details, we can actually reference the other objects we've drawn and use that information to help us see where new details need to be drawn. I can line up the B on the jar by comparing it to the triangle opening in the letter A. Remember, it's important to keep looking at the actual objects you're drawing, because sometimes we can remember things not the way they really look. So by repeatedly looking back at the things I'm drawing, I'm going to make sure that I overlap them right, and I'm going to make sure that I draw everything the right size. Wow, these objects are really challenging. I did pick 4 objects that had different qualities to make it a bit of a challenge, but man, these are complicated. I hope you picked objects that you find fun to draw. If you're following along with me though, make sure that you remember you can pause the video if you ever need to catch up. Don't forget to draw the table in the background. In real life, we would have to set our objects on something if we were going to draw them. Without the table, they're just floating in the air. As the details get smaller and more complicated, I'm going to have to start looking at my objects even more often and keep checking and double checking that I'm drawing the details the way they really look. So you may have to look at your objects a lot the more you get into those small details that they have. And now it's time for shading. When we think about shading, we have to know where the light is coming from. In this picture, the light is coming from the ceiling, and that means that the light is going to hit the tops of the objects first, and that's going to make those parts of each object the lightest, maybe even white. On the opposite side of the object, which is the bottom, that's where the darkest parts are going to be, because the light isn't hitting the bottom at all, because the bottom is facing away from the light. And then in between, like the sides of the objects, are going to have different shades of gray. So an area that's only getting a little bit of light might be dark gray, while a different side of the object that's getting more light might be light gray. But most important, look at the objects and try to draw the shading the way that it looks on the actual object. So just remember that when you're trying to do the shadows, wherever the light is, so the light's coming from the ceiling, the parts that are facing the light, like the tops, are the lightest, and the parts on the opposite side, which would be underneath, so if the light's over here, the opposite side is the shadow, so that's why there's shadows underneath things. And then everything else is a shade of gray in between. Keep practicing with it. If I were to do this again, I probably would have picked objects that had less details in it so that I could focus more on the shadows. So I would probably have picked objects that were a little bit smoother, but I think it turned out okay. I hope you enjoyed this. Remember that there is another video about details and another video about overlapping to go along with this video about value. You might want to check those out, and I will see you next time. Bye.